I could lose my job for this, she said flatly, still holding the keys to the school side door. He grinned like he didn't care, hands deep in his hoodie pocket, the kind of smug that made her want to slap or kiss him. She hadn't decided. That's why I texted you, not the janitor. Elliot knew what he was doing. She didn't. Her name was Mara Lang, 43, English department head, and tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. She wasn't beautiful in the traditional sense. Her hair was always in a loose bun, stress lined her mouth, and her wardrobe said function over form, but she held herself like a woman who had nothing left to prove. The kind of confidence that dared you to test it. She looked at him again. 22. Still had acne scars on his jaw and a chip in his front tooth. The boy wasn't even her student anymore, graduated last spring, barely, but he kept showing up. Hanging around. Asking questions like he cared what she thought about the bell jar or Camus or why people lied when they didn't have to. Why are we here, she asked, but she already knew. He didn't answer. Just walked ahead into the empty auditorium, lights dimmed except for the faint emergency glow strips along the aisles. His sneakers echoed on the stage. You said you wanted to see the set, he called back. She followed, against her better judgment. The set was a half-finished backdrop for the fall play, scaffolding still out, paint trays lying abandoned. He climbed onto the stage and started fiddling with the dimmer. The lights shifted, shadows stretched. For a second she imagined him not as a student but as a man playing at being one, just to get close. How's Columbia? She asked, trying to reset the boundaries. He shrugged. Cold. Pretentious. But I like the bookstore. Smells like paper and desperation. Mara smirked. Sounds like heaven. Not as good as your office. You still got that broken space heater? She stared. That was a private memory. Winter mornings, both of them hunched over paper cups of gas station coffee, him always early to class, her pretending not to notice. Don't romanticize me, she said quietly. I'm not. He stepped down from the stage, closer now. I just remember. Something in her flinched. He noticed. You know this is insane, she said. Yeah. People talk. They already do. That stopped her. You're not afraid? I am. Of boring people. Mediocrity. Dying without ever having one thing that felt real. He paused, then added, softer, you scare me the most. Her laugh was short, ugly. You don't know me. I know you wear your wedding ring even though you've been divorced for 6 years. Her hand twitched at her side. And I know, he went on, voice careful now, you've been staring at that same poem on your wall for 3 months without changing it. The one that ends with, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? God damn him. You're just a boy, she said, but her voice cracked. Then teach me something, he said. Silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. Then, without warning, he reached into the paint tray, dipped his fingers in red, and smeared a line across his cheek like war paint. She gasped. You're insane. Maybe. He wiped his fingers on his hoodie. But you smiled just now. First time I've seen you do that in forever. She blinked and realized he was right. Outside, a storm had started. Rain slapped the windows like fingers trying to get in. Inside, something had already slipped past the gate. He started showing up more often. At first, it was easy to pretend it didn't mean anything. He'd drop by the campus bookstore when she was in line, or appear in the back row of her poetry workshop, claiming to be visiting a friend. It wasn't subtle, but it wasn't blatant either, and that gray area was enough to keep her silent. They had rules. No touching in public. No lingering looks. No texts during the day. And they would never, under any circumstance, be seen alone together outside school grounds. That was her rule. He didn't argue with it. He didn't have to. He just waited. Every conversation was sharper than the last. One night, in her car behind the faculty lot, he asked her why she hadn't remarried. She said, because one was enough. He asked if she was lonely. She asked if he thought she looked like someone who needed saving. He said no. She said good. Then neither of them said anything for almost 3 minutes. After that, he leaned over and kissed her, careful, slow, no tongue, no grab, just enough pressure to push a question into the space between them. She didn't pull away. She didn't kiss him back either. That was the night she started lying to her sister. The rumors started as whispers, too vague to chase down. It wasn't just about them, but it was close enough. Did you hear about Ms. Lang? I saw her with that guy, you know, the one who never really left. Kinda weird, right? Nothing provable, but the scent of it hung in the air, enough to change how people said her name. She noticed 2 girls in her senior lit class stop talking when she walked in. One of the other teachers, Roberts from history, the one who always stood too close, asked her at lunch if she was seeing anyone. He said it with the kind of grin that wasn't really a grin, like he thought she'd either admit it or slap him for asking. She just looked at him until he walked away. Later that week, Elliot came to her office unannounced, just as she was locking up. He looked restless, like he hadn't slept, his hoodie pulled over his head, eyes too wide. She told him it wasn't safe. He said he needed to talk. She let him in anyway. He sat down without asking. My mom called me yesterday. Said she ran into you. Her stomach dropped. Where? Pharmacy. She said you were buying Advil and wine. Mara stared at the floor. She didn't say anything else? No. But she asked a lot of questions after. And what did you say? I told her you were my high school teacher. That I looked up to you. That you're brilliant and hard on everyone and probably the only reason I passed. She sank into the chair across from him, rubbing her temple. He leaned forward. You think she knows? She suspects. So what do we do? We stop. That's what we do. He didn't flinch. You don't mean that. She stood up. I mean exactly that. Because someone might find out? Because it's already happening. He stood, too. His face didn't match his voice, it was calm, but his hands were clenched. You're scared. Of course I am. Of them? Of what this could turn into. Of losing my job. My reputation. My name. Everything I built. I'm not a mistake. I didn't say you were. You're acting like I am. You don't know what it's like to be 43 in a world that turns women into punchlines after 35. I've worked for everything I have, and I'm not going to throw it away because a boy with bright eyes thinks he understands what love is. The room went dead quiet. He looked at her like he'd been slapped. Then, without raising his voice, he said, You think that's what this is? She didn't answer. He nodded slowly, grabbed his backpack, and walked out without looking back. That night, she didn't sleep. The next morning, she found a note shoved under her office door. No name, no signature, just 2 words in slanted pen, tell me. She almost threw it away. Instead, she folded it and slid it into the back of her planner. 3 days passed. Neither of them reached out. She told herself it was over. She told herself it should be. And then, on Friday, just after her last class, her office phone rang. It was the main desk. Someone had left a package for her. Inside was a single photograph, one she didn't remember being taken of her in the parking lot, smiling at something out of frame. On the back was a handwritten note, I think it's him. You should be careful. No name. No return address. Just enough ink to tighten the air around her like a noose. She called him that night. He picked up before the first ring finished. Someone knows, she said. I know. Do you think they'll go to the board? Probably not yet. But they could. They will. There was a pause. Do you regret it? He asked. She didn't say yes. But she didn't say no. She heard him breathe in. Then, for the first time since it started, he said nothing and hung up. The silence stretched for 2 weeks. She tried to forget the photograph, but every time she unlocked her office or checked her email, she expected a message waiting to ruin her. Nothing came. No investigation, no questions, just an invisible tension that pressed against her spine and made her second-guess every word she said to anyone. She didn't reach out to Elliot again. She expected him to disappear the way young men always do when they realize the thrill has limits. But one night, just before midnight, she stepped outside to take out the trash and found him leaning against her fence, hood down, eyes calm, hands deep in his coat like he'd been standing there for hours. She didn't speak. Neither did he. She opened the gate. He followed her inside. They didn't turn on any lights. They didn't explain anything. He took off his coat and shoes, like he belonged there, and she didn't stop him. When he stepped into the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water, she finally said, "You shouldn't be here." He nodded. Then he said, "Do you want me to go?" and she didn't answer. He walked past her and sat on the couch. She stood in the hallway, arms crossed, every instinct screaming to choose survival. He looked over his shoulder and said, "You're still wearing the ring." She looked down at her hand and didn't move. He said, "Why?" and she said, "Because it reminds me how easy it is to lie to yourself for 10 years. He didn't flinch. He just leaned back and said, "I want to stay tonight, but I'll leave in the morning if you ask me to." She sat across from him and watched him like he was an unfamiliar animal waiting for a command. She wanted to say no. She wanted to protect the parts of herself that still felt whole. But the quiet between them wasn't cold. It wasn't desperate. It felt like something had changed without permission. She nodded once, and he stood, walked to the edge of the room, and sat beside her. They didn't touch. They didn't kiss. They just sat there until the exhaustion caught up to her, and when she finally closed her eyes, he stayed still. In the morning, she woke up alone. No note. No trace. Just the faint smell of his shampoo on her pillow and an ache in her chest that wasn't fear or guilt or regret, it was worse than that. It was wanting more. That week, they started meeting in places that weren't safe. Her car. His friend's basement. A rental studio on the edge of town that charged by the hour. The danger stopped bothering him. It never stopped bothering her. She told him they needed to be careful. He said they were. She told him it was only a matter of time. He told her he didn't care. She said, "You will." One night, after they hadn't spoken for 3 days, he showed up at her door with a black eye. She stepped aside without asking questions. He sat at her kitchen table, picked up the ice pack she handed him, and didn't say where the bruise came from. After 10 minutes of silence, she said, "Did someone hit you because of me?" And he said, "No. Not exactly." She said, "What does that mean?" And he said, "It means I got into a fight." She pressed him until he admitted it was with a guy from his building who made a comment about her, nothing direct, just something about how old she looked for you. Elliot didn't say what he did after that, just that it ended with blood and silence. She didn't yell at him. She didn't tell him he was reckless. She just sat down across from him and said, "This is what it's going to be. People staring. Whispering. Laughing behind our backs." He looked at her like she was telling him something he already knew. Then he said, "It's still worth it." She didn't respond. The next day, during her office hours, one of the newer faculty members knocked on her door and asked if she had a minute. His name was Harris, young, overly polite, the kind of man who never said anything without checking if it was okay. He closed the door behind him and didn't sit. He said, "I don't want to overstep," which meant he was about to, "but I think someone's watching you." She didn't move. He said, "There's been talk. People saw a guy leaving your car." I didn't say anything, "But it's traveling." She asked who was talking. He said he didn't want to drag names into it. She said, "Then don't bring it up at all," and opened her laptop without looking at him. He didn't leave right away. He said, "I don't think they'll stay quiet forever," and then he walked out. That night, she called Elliot and told him to stop coming near the school. He asked if something happened. She said no. He asked if it was about the fight. She said no. He asked if she was done. She didn't answer. He said, I can take it, but I need to know what I am to you. She said, you're not a secret, and he said, but I am. Then he hung up. 3 days later, he sent her a message, I miss you but I won't chase you. She read it 5 times, didn't reply, and sat in her car in front of his building until her legs went numb. She didn't go in. That Friday, after a department meeting, she walked back to her office and noticed the door was slightly open. She never left it like that. On her desk was a sealed envelope. No name. Inside was a photograph of them. Not kissing. Not touching. Just walking together in the parking lot at dusk, her hand too close to his, the look on her face too unguarded. The photo was grainy, but the intent behind it was clear. Someone wanted her to know they were watching. She called him, heart pounding. No answer. She called again. Nothing. She drove to his apartment. When she knocked, a woman answered the door. Blonde, early 40s, same tired eyes as Mara. She said, you must be her. Mara stared. The woman said, I'm his mother. You should come inside. The apartment was clean in the way single mothers keep things clean, laundry folded but not put away, grocery bags on the counter, a faint smell of something cooked hours ago. Mara stepped inside without a word. Elliot wasn't there. His mother didn't ask what she wanted. She just walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and poured 2 glasses of water. Mara didn't touch hers. She waited. The woman sat across from her at the table, arms folded, face calm in a way that didn't match the situation. She said, you're not the first older woman he's chased. Mara didn't react. The woman went on, but you're the first one who didn't say no. Mara said, I'm not here to be judged. The woman raised her eyebrows slightly. You think I'm judging you? I know what this looks like. I don't need a lecture. You think I care about appearances? I had him when I was 21, dropped out of school, raised him by myself, watched him get into places I never even visited. I've been lied to by every man I've loved. You don't scare me. Then why am I here? Because someone left a picture under my door this morning. Same one you probably got. Mara's breath caught. The woman nodded. Whoever's doing this wants something. They're not just trying to humiliate you. They're trying to break him. And if you're not prepared for what that means, then you need to leave. I never wanted this to happen, Mara said. But it did. There was a long pause. Mara said, where is he? Out. With a friend. Probably trying not to punch another wall. I need to talk to him. I'm sure you do. But you should hear this first, he thinks you're going to run. That's what he told me. He said, she's smart. She'll disappear before it all explodes. Mara looked at her hands. Is he wrong? I don't know. I think you do. Mara stood, suddenly needing to move, suddenly needing to breathe air that didn't feel this thick. She walked to the window and looked down at the street. She wanted to disappear and be seen at the same time. She wanted someone to fix it. She wanted it to not matter. The woman said, do you love him? Mara didn't answer. That's what I thought, she added. Mara turned back. It's not that simple. It never is. But you don't get to act like you're protecting him by pulling away. That boy doesn't believe in halfway feelings. He never has. I could lose everything. So could he. But he's still here. Mara didn't remember leaving the apartment. She only remembered getting into her car and sitting with the engine off, watching the building, trying to decide whether anything they had was worth what it might cost. The next day, a school-wide staff email was sent out from the assistant principal about ongoing concerns regarding inappropriate boundaries between faculty and former students. It didn't name names. It didn't need to. She read it 3 times. Then she got up, walked to the bathroom, and threw up. An hour later, she saw Elliot sitting on a bench near the main quad, headphones in, head down. Students walked past him without noticing. She stood across the walkway, just far enough to stay invisible. He didn't look up. She didn't move. Then she turned and walked away. That evening, he came to her house. He knocked once and waited. She opened the door but didn't speak. He stepped inside without being asked. She closed the door and leaned against it. "You saw the email," he said. "Yes. I know who sent the photo. It's Roberts. The history teacher. He's been watching us for weeks. I caught him taking pictures from his car." "How do you know it was him?" "I confronted him." "What did he say?" "He smiled." She felt sick. "We need to get ahead of it," he said. "How?" "Tell the truth." She laughed once, dry and bitter. "To who?" "The school board? My students? Your friends? To anyone who asks. They'll crucify me." "Then don't hide." "I'm not brave like you." "Yes, you are." She turned away, walked to the living room, and sat down. He followed but didn't sit. "I'm not your project," she said quietly. "I know. And I'm not your rebellion, or your lesson, or your first heartbreak. I know. I'm not something you survive. You're the only thing that feels real." She looked at him then. His face was tired. His voice wasn't dramatic. It was steady, quiet, stripped of all the performance he used to rely on when he wanted something. She said, "They're going to find out." "I'm not ashamed." "I am." He didn't move. "I'm ashamed of how I let it happen," she continued. "Not of you. Of me. I let myself be seen. I let you see me. And I can't take it back." "Then don't." She stood and walked to him, stopped an inch away. She looked at his face like it was the last time. "Will you come with me?" he asked. "Where?" "Tomorrow night. The school board is having a public meeting. They'll be talking about the policy breach. You should be there." "Are you serious?" "I'll stand next to you." She shook her head. "That's not how this works." "It is now." She stared at him. Then she said, "You don't know what you're asking." "I do." He didn't blink. The next night, she stood in the back of the school auditorium while the board chair spoke about ongoing evaluations and concerns raised by members of the community. Elliot sat near the front. He didn't look back. People whispered. Some stared. Some didn't recognize her at all. The chair asked if there were any public comments. Elliot stood. She stopped breathing. "My name is Elliot Brandt," he said, clear and unshaking. "I graduated last year. I've been seeing someone who works here. It was never illegal. It started after I left. But people have opinions. That's fine. I'm not here to defend what you think. I'm just here to say I'm not ashamed." Gasps. A few murmurs. Someone called out his name. He turned and looked directly at her. She didn't move. The auditorium was too quiet. The board members shuffled their papers without speaking. A few of them looked at her, but most pretended they didn't know who she was, which was a lie. She stood frozen at the back of the room, every part of her alert and bracing for the collapse. Elliot sat back down. The chair cleared his throat and thanked him for his bravery before quickly moving to the next agenda item about budget cuts. No one addressed what had just been said. No one said her name. But they didn't have to. After the meeting, she walked out the side door, past the trophy cases, past the photographs of smiling students she no longer recognized, and into the night air that felt heavier than it should. She kept walking to the edge of the parking lot before stopping. Elliot followed her out. She didn't turn when she heard his footsteps. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. "I had to." "No, you didn't. They were going to use it against you. They still will." He stepped closer. She stepped away. "You think this proves something?" she asked. "I think it shows I'm not hiding. But I still am." "I know." She turned around. "Do you understand what happens now? There's going to be questions. There will be a hearing. They'll bring up every email, every hallway conversation, every time you stayed after class. Even if nothing happened back then, it won't matter. They'll twist it. They'll say I manipulated you. They'll say I abused my position. Then let them. You don't understand what that means." "I do. But I don't care what they say. I care about what's real. Real doesn't matter here." He stared at her, waiting for her to say something else. She didn't. He walked up and reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. He said, "I love you." She didn't say it back. They didn't talk for the next 2 days. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from the district. 1 from a reporter. 2 from students who weren't sure whether to support her or stay out of it. She stayed home. She ignored the calls. She didn't sleep. She didn't leave the house except to walk the dog once at night. On the 3rd morning, she received an official notice of investigation. She read it standing in the hallway, barefoot, holding coffee she never drank. Her hands were steady. Her stomach wasn't. She called Elliot that evening. He picked up on the 2nd ring. "I have to go in on Monday," she said. "I'll go with you." "No. That won't help." "Then what do you need?" "I don't know yet." There was silence. Then he said, "I'll be here." "I know." On Monday, she walked into the district office wearing the same blazer she wore when she first got the job. The room was plain, 2 chairs across from 3 administrators and a legal representative. She answered their questions. She repeated dates. She told the truth. She didn't cry. When they asked why she didn't report the relationship sooner, she said, "Because I knew what you'd do with it." One of them wrote that down. The rest didn't respond. They told her they would deliberate and follow up with a formal statement by the end of the week. She said thank you and left without waiting. That night, Elliot came over with takeout. She didn't want to eat. He didn't try to make her. He sat beside her on the couch, watching the television she wasn't paying attention to. After half an hour, he asked, "What happens now?" "I wait." "For what?" "A decision." "And after that?" "I don't know." He reached for her hand. She let him. "I'm scared," he said. "I am too." They didn't say anything else. The following Friday, she received an email. It was short. The board had decided to place her on unpaid leave pending further review. They would reconvene in 6 months. In the meantime, her classes would be reassigned. Her office would be cleared. She wasn't fired, not officially, but the message was clear. She forwarded the email to her lawyer. Then she shut the laptop and sat at the table until it got dark. Elliot came over an hour later. She handed him the printed copy. He read it and didn't speak. She said, "You should go back to school." He looked up. "You should be with people your age. Doing something that's not this." "What are you doing?" "Trying to give you a way out." "I don't want out." "I'm not asking." He stared at her for a long time. "So this is it?" "It has to be." "Why?" "Because I've already lost everything I worked for. I can't lose myself too." He stood, holding the paper in his hand. He said, "Say it." "Say what?" "Say you don't love me." She didn't speak. He waited. She looked away. That's what I thought, he said, and walked out. He didn't come back the next day. Or the one after that. She didn't reach out. She told herself it was the right thing. That it was better this way. That silence was safer than dragging him through whatever was coming next. A week passed. Then two. One morning, she received a postcard in the mail. No return address. No message. Just a photo of a red theater curtain and the date written in ink. A date 2 months from now. She stared at it for a long time. Then she pinned it to the fridge. She didn't cry. She just stood there, thinking about the space between things that are over and things that haven't happened yet. And wondering which one she was in.